Good. So as you all know, this will be a public video. The recording will be available for everyone. So we'll put it on our channel and then see. And of course, you will also be able to access it and share it with others. Hi, Chaya. Good to see you. We're just getting started. Good. So yeah, today's topic is microbiome. And I've added this small question around it on who am I? So I think it sort of links to that inquiry that we always have in yoga. So that's part of the inquiry, and we'll come to that towards the end. But before we start, let's start with our intention. So everyone just sit comfortably. If you are on a chair, let your feet be comfortably on the ground, flat. Just let them rest, your back supported. Gently close your eyes. Bring your attention to your breath. Notice the air going in and out through your nostrils. Then repeat after me. May we be Saath together. May we be Jigyasu, curious. May we be Virya, energetic. May our learnings be Tejasvi, bright. Shanti, Sukoon, peace. Good to see you. Hi, Chaya. Hi, Madhuri. Good to see you. Welcome. So, yeah.
Hi.
Good. So I have Chaya. That is good. So I always feel good. Any technical, medical thing, I'll direct to you. Yeah, we have a doctor here, so it's good. Hi, Sayantan.
Hi
This is the
Sandeep, hi everybody. Good to be here.
yeah. So let's get started. So as I said in the message, we look at three questions. What is the microbiome? What role does the microbiome play in my well-being? And what can I do to maintain a healthy microbiome for my well-being? So basically, our theme is being swasth, being well, being healthy, being sthit in ourselves. So how does the microbiome play a role in it? So that's sort of really important. But let's start with what is the microbiome? I think some of you know, but for common understanding, the human microbiome, oftentimes the word microbiota is also used. So you will find that also in the literature. It's essentially various microorganisms. So it could be of the type of bacteria, fungi, virus, and also this archaea, this protists. There's some other uh, organisms also now there. But largely, let's say all microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, virus, which we are familiar, which reside within us, within this, like within the boundary of our skin. And they are all over the place, including the skin, right? So any, of course, orifice it's there, but it's there in the skin, the mouth, the digestive tract, the urogenital tract. So it's everywhere. The microbiota or these microorganisms, and they are collectively known as the microbiota. Microbiome becomes the genetic information in it. Just like we have the genome, which is the genetic sequence, microbiome is the genetic sequence of the microbiota, or the genetic mix. So that's why those two terms are used quite interchangeably. Now, just to give a sense of the facts and scales that are there. So the number of these microorganism or microbe cells is 3 times the number of human cells. Right? So the cells we have, estimates are about, we have 30 to 40 trillion cells with our own DNA, which is unique to each individual, which is though essentially a human DNA, but close to 100 trillion. That's 3 times that number is the estimate for the microorganisms that reside within us. Yeah, so it's 3 times. So that's why this question, who am I? Am I the human DNA or am I these microbes? So is it the other way? Have the microbes colonized us and created this to exist? And that question will keep getting more and more interesting as we go deeper. The next fact, this is still okay. The next fact, the genetic information, which is what we see or makes us uniquely human, right? The genetic code, the DNA, that is 150 times in the microbes than in us, right? So we have a DNA, the human DNA, as we know, that's in 46 chromosomes in our genes, etc. That it's measured in kilobytes, whatever that kilobytes is, 150 times that information, that code, that genetic information is in the microorganisms. So they are far more, one can say, either intelligent or at least information is definitely more. And we'll see they are intelligent as well based on the function that they actually do. Right? So this question will keep coming. This entity which we see, this body that we see, it seems more microorganism than human to start with. It. The aggregation is human, but if you start now looking at it this way, it's more and more actually both in terms of number of cells, in terms of the information that they contain. It's about way more than the cell in than our own human part. And yeah, the second minor fact, and that's why that's also studied the most, is that 90% of this is actually in the GI tract, which is from mouth to anus. Right? Our entire from mouth to anus, this whole tract, it's filled with not just the stomach, not just the abdomen, not just the large intestine or small intestine or any of these, but the entire tract, it's there. It's there in small crevices. It's there in our mouth, of course. It's in the food pipe, stomach, everywhere these microorganisms exist. They are, as one can say, as allowed, as persistent, as prevailing, pervasive as we are. It's almost everywhere, in almost every corner. Of course, on our skin, etc. It's there. Everywhere it is there. So just give a moment of pause here and see how is this sitting for people, and like how does this fact landing, that the fact that the number of cells is more, the genetic information is more, and they are all over. No, no reactions. Still, we've got some new people. Good, Shaun, Sanjeev, Shivani, welcome. Or this was known. This was known to people. Yes, Andy.
I have a question. So when you say the genetic information is 150x
Yeah.
and the number of cells is 3x, is there more information
Yes.
that the... Okay, interesting.
So basically, the thing is that our cells are whatever, say 30 trillion, but each cell has the same DNA, correct? So our entire information is in one DNA. So our DNA is very long for each cell. But this microbiome has huge diversity. Some have estimated 30,000 types of microbes. So the DNA of each microbe is less, but its diversity is what increases the actual information. So in some ways, all our 30 trillion cells have the same information. Does that make sense? Why their information is more?
Yes,
No.
yes.
Yeah.
That definitely helps kind of reconcile.
And we'll see the role because the genetic information is what's causing the processing, right? So again, the background here is, even if we say, I think that's a good question to just connect. Why is this genetic information important, right? So in our DNA, the code that we have, what does that translate into? That translates into the proteins that we make, right? It first makes the RNA and then codes the proteins, and the proteins result in the whole structure, right? Those proteins is what causes various enzymes, various things, all the function, all the structure of our existence is due to this code that is in the DNA, right? So all intelligence, every process, every function happens because what's there in the DNA. And that's why the content of the DNA is very important. That's like an indicator of how much uniqueness is there, how much differentiation is there, how much processes we can do, what complexity we can handle. All that is there in the DNA in terms of like a store. It's like a program. So that's why higher the DNA means there is more processing that it's capable of, more complexity it can handle. Yes, makes sense. Yeah, I think Paras, you had your hand up.
Yes, and we can also I do acknowledge we just started with, so we can also punt it to later. But my question is, like typically you would hear, right? Like especially Western medicine. My dad is a doctor. Like, oh, brush your teeth. You're like, you have germs, right?
Yes.
And so the natural sense is everything which is not human is bad.
Yeah.
And so you try to get rid of it, brush your teeth, do this, do that, right? Like, wash every day with soap, because like you need to get rid of all the bacteria and germs. So like, would love to hear your thoughts on like how
Yeah,
to
we'll
change.
come to that. We'll come to that. Keep that thought, and if by the end we don't have an answer, then come back. But yeah, that will cover. Yes, Suchika.
Just a thought, not so much a question,
Yeah.
is that especially to Rose when you said this, the genome of each bacteria is definitely shorter and everything. But these bacteria have survived, were there before us and will probably survive after us.
Yes.
And so just the thought arises that their system or their genetic code is so much more efficient and so much more effective, both. For a shorter code, they figured out, survival and everything and find their hosts and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And you said something about host, it makes you think whether you were created for them, and that's
Yeah.
a possibility.
Yes.
But just a thought, that's the thought that arose. So maybe, and I haven't studied this in any detail myself, but maybe that's something to think about for all of us, is like if you're interested going down that road of seeing efficiency of the genetic code, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those questions, right? Whether they created us or so it's like a very symbiosis now relationship. They have found both ways that some of these bacteria can't survive when taken out of the human environment. And we will see now what happens if they go out, what happens to us,
Yep.
which is what we are seeing externally, but we'll start seeing some of those aspects as well, what that causes.
One
How
thing
do we
also
connect?
it
Sure, sorry. Yes.
I was saying one thing it also kind of demonstrates or shows the power of nature, evolution, coexistence, right?
Yes.
How life coexists in all aspects of like nature.
Yeah.
What we can see, what we can't see. So
We
it's
can't.
very fascinating. Yeah.
Yes. And 90% of it is in our gut. Shawan is asking,
Yeah.
how do we connect the microbes to fascia, since fascia is what binds everything? Yeah, and Shawan, as we see the functionality of the microbes, my understanding, and this is not very clear, I haven't seen it anywhere else, but my hypothesis is fascia is like what gives the structure, and microbes is what gives the function, a lot of the functionality. And we'll see based on their role. It's like anatomy and physiology in some ways. That's sort of where they are linked, or what roles they play in our system. And we are discovering both of those simultaneously, one more on the anatomy side and one more on the physiology side, or the processing side, the functional side. The other is on the structure side. Okay, good. Yeah, so good questions, good thoughts. So now let's get to what do they do, so we can start seeing what role they play, right, in my well-being, in each of our well-being for us. So the one way to think of very simply each microbe, right, and that's why that genetic information is very important, is that it's like a chemical factory that takes as input what we consume, like whatever food, diet, thoughts, emotions we are taking, and output it gives is useful chemicals. So it's like a chemical manufacturing factory, and different microbes play different roles. And that's why the diversity, the different DNA of each is important, because as soon as you connect the DNA to a process, to a function, like it's in our case also, like a part of the DNA is responsible for certain proteins. Same way it's for the bacteria, that a different microbe will result in a different kind of function. And these useful chemicals are what? So some examples are things like vitamins. So a lot of vitamin Bs, including B12. And I'm highlighting B12 because B12 deficiency is the big thing now, right? And we are giving supplements and we'll see that. But the root cause is that the bacteria that generates B12 in us has gotten depleted because of use of antibiotics and other reasons, right? So B12 deficiency is, and then we look for B12 in other sources which cause other problems or in supplements. But B12 itself actually is generated, is manufactured by specific bacteria. This is identified now in many other vitamins, particularly of the B type. Then something known as short chain fatty acids, which have a very important role in our entire physiology. So that is generated. Hormones. Some hormones are actually made by these bacteria. We think hormones are only secreted by organs, but bacteria actually manufacture. And they usually use, their input is stuff which is not typically digested by us directly, or from which we cannot draw energy out, which is stuff like fiber or very complex carbohydrates, so which we are not able to digest. That's what the bacteria use as their food, as their input, and convert it into these chemicals and neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are, again, for people who may not be aware, are chemicals which are used by our nerve cells, which are there in the brain, in the rest of our body, to communicate, to perceive. So neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, if you've heard of these are responsible for even things like our mood, right? Our mental health. And these are secreted, or rather not secreted, but actually manufactured by the microbes that are there in our gut. Yeah, so these microbes are playing a very, very, very fundamental role in our overall well-being, in our physical, our mental, and many aspects. So if you can see, if I just look at these chemicals, the functions that get affected directly by these functions are simple. Our immune system. Our immune system response depends on this. Our digestion, our metabolism, our mood, our mental health, that is dependent on these chemicals, the concentration of these chemicals, how much are they present in our body, in our bloodstream. And these, the source, we have a in-house captive manufacturing facilities, or the possibility of it, that they do this. Yeah. So they play a very, very, very important role. Like I hope you're seeing on the right side, right? What all does it almost covers everything. And if there is something which I haven't covered, I think this image, this is from this, I have given the link to this paper. I can share it also. It's called Human Gut Microbiota in Health and Disease, Unveiling the Relationship. This is a review article 2022, written by many like learned scientists, frontiers in microbiology. And this is what happens. So they call it dysbiosis of gut bacteria. Dysbiosis means when the balance of this bacteria, the mix, has gone off, right? What we can call as good and bad bacteria. There is less of good, more of bad. What all can happen in the gut, right? So you can see right from the top. And the idea is I can't explain everything. I don't understand everything also in this. But just to see the variety, look at, there is a gut-brain axis. So it affects brain. It affects the stress, anxiety, depression, IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome, schizophrenia, cognitive decline, autism, gut-brain endocrine axis, which is our hormonal system, regulatory, metabolic, behavioral, and hormonal disorders, gut-heart axis, cardiovascular disease, atherosclerosis, thrombotic events, hypertension. So they are finding links with everything in this. Gut-lung axis, COPD. In some other paper, I saw asthma also. Gut-liver axis. So liver inflammation, hepatocellular carcinoma, which is cancer, non-alcoholic fatty liver. Some of these disease names might be sounding familiar to some, right? Gut-pancreas axis. So diabetes type 1 already is very tightly linked. Pancreas cell inflammation. Gut-bone axis, osteoporosis, bone demineralization. Gut-muscle axis, muscle impairment, frailty, sarcopenia. Gut-skin axis, acne, psoriasis, dermatitis, wrinkles, aging. And reproductive axis also, infertility, ovarian dysfunction, ovarian cancer, postmenopausal osteoporosis. Gut-kidney axis, gut bladder axis. So I have so many names, right? So I'm repeating chronic disease, chronic kidney disease, acute kidney inflammation, urinary tract infection, overactive bladder. So all you can see the entire thing. I don't think anything is left. Any of the main organs or systems are left in this because they are so fundamental. They are generating these fundamental chemicals. They are the source of those chemicals. And then the solution typically has been what? That we supplement those solutions. Sorry, chemicals. B12 is less, take a B12 supplement. Right? Mood is bad, take a serotonin receptor. So you give serotonin while the manufacturing plant has gone. That's the critical problem. Dopamine problem, give dopamine. That's the logical solution. That's what the entire medicine since almost 100 years has been about. Since penicillin was discovered, which was, I think, which is where we started, what Paras was saying, right? We thought every bacteria is bad. So we went after bacteria like anything. We went after virus like anything. This is the last 10 years we started understanding we exist in a very symbiotic relationship. We exist because this bacteria exists. And like Ruchika was saying, bacteria, virus existed before. Virus was even before bacteria. RNA was probably before DNA. That's what evolution is saying. Almost 1 to 2 billion years before bacteria came, there was virus, there was RNA. Virus is not considered a life form, and that's why biologists don't like viruses. But they are there. They have their own code that is supporting us in their own way. And so we went blindly after all bacteria, indiscriminately killing through in the name of sanitation, hygiene, antibiotics, chemicals all around us. And what that has done has depleted also some of these good, useful bacteria because those agents were almost blind to the type of bacteria or at least never even tested. So even clinical trials never considered this as a side effect. What's happening to your microbiota? They didn't gut bind. They never tested because they didn't know the role. This is last 10, 15 years. You'll see this paper is 2022, very recent stuff that we're discovering. And for any of this to become medicine will take another 20 years. So it's important. A doctor talking about this, very few doctors will be able to talk about this, right? So they will not even believe it. They'll still prescribe antibiotics because clinical trials for any of this will take time. But it's for us, again, to take a call, each one of us to find what works for us, what doesn't. So this is sort of the range. So I'll take a pause here and see again how this is landing for people. Is the role clear? Are there questions about this role? Because the next is what can we do about it, which is very essential and important. But it's important to first know just their role. And almost, as you can see, every disease condition is linked because it links directly to inflammation also. And inflammation is linked to most chronic conditions now. Most, if not all. Yes, Ruchika. I'm
The
leaving this
question
slide
is,
open for some more time, then I'll move to the plenary. Yes, go on.
I was wondering if any of your research you came across anything related to milk products, right? Because a very recent, fairly recent, just like microbiome, a fairly more recent trend has been that milk products are inflammatory or cause inflammation. Similarly, gluten, we've seen all this, but we've traditionally had these in our diets for a long time, right? We have yogurt, which is rich in probiotics, and I'm guessing milk as well, right? Which is unpasteurized or not highly pasteurized. But any thoughts on that? Because I'm
Yeah, yeah.
almost wondering if it is that we have depletion of the microbiome, and that's why we're having the issues with those products rather than those products itself being
No.
the trigger,
We'll
which
come to
is
the
possible.
recommendations. We'll come to the recommendations, and yeah, so milk, any form of animal protein is not very supportive of the microbiome, the good microbiome, including casein. That's there in most milks. So in India, we used to have this A2 milk, which was different, which didn't have casein, number one. Most milk which is outside has casein. Anyway, what we get today in mass is not milk. I think it's some white liquid, some white chemical soup that you are getting a mix of. But even if you try and go to the pure milk, there are challenges with respect to this. But we'll come to that in the recommendation side. Yeah, so we'll come. Food is a big part of what we take or not. But right now, just staying with what the purpose, the role of the microbiome is that getting settled in what important role it plays in my well-being. And then again, the same question, is it something external to me or is it very much part of my Annamaya Kosha? So who am I? Am I just the DNA, human DNA cells, my DNA cells, or this whole entity, is it part of me? I think of my kidney as me, right, today. My heart as me, my lung as me. I see that as an organ. But based on this function that these microbes are playing, where are you on that today in this question again? Who am I? Is this part of you? Is it still something external? Well, that's a big part of the healing. We'll come to diet, etc. But just this understanding what role they are playing. Can we really survive without them? We know we can't survive without our heart, without our kidney, without our lungs. But can we survive without our microbiome? There's something to reflect on. Just that's why this role is very important to acknowledge, to understand what role they are playing. And it's right from our physical, mental, and even in the yogic system, the pranic well-being as well. So in Ayurveda, like in our tradition in Ayurveda, it said all disease starts in the gut. And I think in their own way, they understood this. And it's gotten very much focused, I think, even in Ayurveda, sometimes too much on the food, with the cup, etc. What food has what, and etc. But I think they somehow, our Ayurveda Veds, they could figure the impact of the microbiome. They may not have spelled it out in that same language as microbes, if something we cannot see, etc. But I think they really saw the impact of the function that they were playing, how important this aspect, some aspect in our gut was playing in every aspect of our existence almost. Yes, Sanjeev.
Sandeep, it also reminds me of, in Swasth, one of the slides you have this disease and then medicine for the immediate cure, and then you have the exercise and this, right? So
Yes.
it kind of falls in that bucket where you do exercise and nutrition and correct it wholesome, and immediate intervention is medicine, basically.
Maybe medicine, immediate
Yeah,
intervention.
yeah.
Yes, this is for the long term, to come to that Swasth, to steady,
Yeah.
sustained well-being, essentially,
Yeah.
for sustaining the well-being that is there.
Yeah.
And these are the things, right? So if your B12 is less, you may need a supplement now, but can you regenerate? Can you connect with your own microbiome, right? Can you replenish? And that's what we will see. Can we regenerate our microbiome?
Yeah.
Can we rework it? So, but for that, we need to see it as part of us. It's like I almost see, and some scientists, etc., also saying it's almost like another organ of our body, which we weren't even aware of. It's very much part of us. The DNA might be different, but it's a symbiotic relationship. Symbiosis means that both need each other to survive. And it's happened that way. So many bacteria actually don't have certain aspects which typically, so they can't survive outside the environment of a human gut, for example. Right? So they need that environment to survive. So bacteria is also let go in some ways and become dependent on us, and vice versa.
Like a
So I
food
see some
chain.
new faces. Varsha, Pratik, hi, Hipali. New as in new today. Yeah, so good to see you guys. Yeah, how is this fitting, everybody? Good questions, comments? Yes, those I can see at least. Yeah. Makes sense?
I would say it's applicable totally to me. All of it.
To everybody, because I think we have all, particularly in India and outside maybe Indians, we have this, antibiotics are like pop-ins initially, right? They were like pop-ins. You pop them, just chalo chocolate kha rahe, kuch ho raha, antibiotic low, and that antibiotic was depleting without us knowing. It depleted all our microbes, and we see those issues coming up then later in life. So it's linked to obesity, for example, diabetes, hypertension, and so many others, IBS, etc. All that I talked about, but some of these very common conditions are linked to it. Yes. Yeah, Paras. your hand up. I think you asked what is inflammation.
Yeah, my question was in the chat, right? How would you define inflammation? I see that term used a lot, and like I understand, like हाथ दुख रहा है तो like it's inflammation or like कुछ सूज गया है, but like what's the generic like in?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So inflammation actually is a natural response of the body to when it feels being attacked, right? So it is a mechanism for sometimes to hold the place for it to heal. So if you say, for example, have a cut, bruise, or even your ankle gets twisted, it will eventually swell up so that you can't move it. So it creates an environment for it to heal. And certain chemical processes start there. Certain kinds of specific chemicals are secreted to enable to do that. Now, what is meant to happen is after that healing has happened, that process is supposed to stop, right? The healing process has to stop so that it can go back to normal. But many times now it doesn't happen. Or the trigger of the chronic inflammation happens when that inflammation gets triggered when there is no injury also. Or the injury is small, the inflammation extent is high. So now what that is doing is, you can imagine, it's freezing the body in a lot of places, not allowing it to function, because that is the role of inflammation, to stop the functioning so it can heal. So it doesn't overwork, right? Just what we would do in case of a fracture, plaster it. So it doesn't overwork, but then you remove the plaster. But here then it stays and that starts getting accumulated. And now they're finding even electromagnetically, electrically, inflammation is linked with positive charge. Like there is more accumulation of positive charge, which distorts the electric field, etc. One might say that distorts the prana flow also in the human. So that's what inflammation is. And again, bacteria, microbe play a very important role in this signaling mechanism. That's their role in the immune system, that, okay, when to do what, when to start, not start, it is able to detect that. So allergens is very important. So they are able to figure, or like allergy is misidentifying, right? When we misidentify something which is safe as something which is not safe. So our body reacts, right? It starts fighting you. So that may happen when our, again, microbiome is off, because something which is safe, I'm not able to recognize. So I trigger a response. That's allergy. Hi, Sita. Good to see you. Good. Any other questions, comments on the role? Good. So shall we go? What to do? Sorry, I heard. Clear? Abhi tak the role? So for Sita's benefit, we'll summarize the role. So we'll say the role of the microbiome, which is all the bacteria and virus that live in us. I think I have found this as a very simple analogy, so I'm repeating it. They are like chemical factories. It's so complex. Just imagine it it's like an MIDC that we have in Maharashtra, Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation, right? It's a big area of chemical plants. It's not one chemical plant. It's multiple, 1,000 at least. So the diversity is at least 1,000 bacteria. Each bacteria has a different role and it takes certain inputs. All bacteria don't take everything. Each bacteria also has a specific input and it generates a specific output. And those output are these very useful chemicals like vitamins, like hormones, like short chain fatty acids, like neurotransmitters, which play a very, very fundamental role in all the systems of our body. So if you are missing certain microbes in terms of diversity, it's likely you're missing certain functions, you're missing certain chemicals or the ability to generate enough of those chemicals that you need, right? And this mix is constantly changing. It changes the mix of how much of what microbe is there. That's not static. It keeps changing. And hence, absence is of any kind of the diversity is called as dysbiosis, which might happen due to antibiotic overuse, chemical exposures, whatever can harm bacteria, the kind of diet we have, and we'll see those in the recommendations, hence knowing what not to eat. But that results in various diseases, various kinds of disorders and diseases, which is summarized here. Everything, right from our brain to our bladder, everything from top to bottom, like head to toe, everything is covered. All organs, all functions are affected if our microbiome is in dysbiosis, may get affected. So different people, it will be different things that will show up. That's what we are seeing as different cardiovascular, hypertension, diabetes, COPD, fatty liver, whatever you name it, we are seeing in these conditions, hormonal disorders, etc. Yeah, so obviously you will get this. As I said, the link is here. I am also adding to this, and you can look at it like the different metabolites. These chemicals are known as metabolites. So this table is there, including the role of each metabolite. I'm not getting into it. Same is with the diseases that have been established with these references, right? The chemicals that are, it's like the papers, the research that has resulted in what kinds of, like, that's where I saw asthma, as I was saying. There's a link between microbe and asthma, type 1 diabetes, irritable bowel syndrome. These are the papers, very specific papers that they have found, anxiety, depression, that they have found this link of sometimes even very specific kinds or strains of bacteria that are linked with it. So to summarize, this is another from a chapter of a book, A Prescription for Healthy Living, A Guide to Lifestyle Medicine. Chapter 15, that's a chapter 15. From there, this comes. The lack of a healthy bacterial microbiome leads to an increased risk of developing atopy and allergies, gastrointestinal diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease, irritable bowel syndrome, and colorectal cancer, and metabolic disease such as obesity. It has also been implicated in neurodevelopment disorders, mental health disease, and mood. So this one statement I took verbatim from that paper because I think it summarizes almost everything, right? It's everything. Allergies, immune system, atopy, GI stuff, mental health, metabolic syndrome, which includes diabetes, etc., and obesity. So a lot of times weight loss, many of us I know, we've been trying, doesn't happen. We try everything. It's not a calorie count only. There is a big role that the microbiome plays. Or we lose weight, then we gain back. Because again, we have not addressed the core issue, the root cause is the depletion of that microbe in our system, right? So it is about integrating that microbiome entirely with us. I think it's integrating, it's being in yoga with our own microbiome. Right? It's part of us. It's definitely part of our Annamaya Kosha. If we start thinking them of external, I think it will be very difficult. We have to make friends. They are us, we are symbiotic with them. So I can't overemphasize that point. Good, clear? Then we'll move to now the recommendations and I think some of the questions I think like Ruchika was saying and others, how to build one. But I'm again pausing here. Any questions on the role, on what they are, where they are? They are one summary. They are all over the body, across our skin, as I covered earlier, in every part of our body, mostly in our gut, 90%, but everywhere else. And gut, GI means mouth to anus, not just the stomach, not the intestine, but everything, right in our mouths to our throat. Different bacterial species, very different microbiome in each part. And it's very interesting. The pH is different. I think the pH in every part of our GI tract is different. pH is the acidity level. Sorry if people look at the acidity level is different. So all bacteria can't survive everywhere. Different bacteria are surviving. So evolution, coexistence has done that filtering for us. Different bacteria in our mouth, different in our, because the acid level in the stomach is so high, but still there are bacteria which survive there. They actually line our stomach. And sometimes when that lining goes, they leak into the bloodstream. That's called as a leaky gut. The leaky gut is when bacteria which are meant to be in certain parts of our digestive tract, they leak into the bloodstream and hence they go to different parts. So a good bacteria in the gut can become a bad bacteria somewhere else, right? Because it's not suited for that environment. It's not symbiotic there. It could be parasitic there, right? So there is a very close, what nature has evolved is a very intelligent system there. Very, very important mix that is there. So it's obviously, as you can see, fairly complex, still evolving, not there, but very simple. Think of the microbiome in your gut, at least, as a huge complex of chemical factors. Different chemicals are being generated by different microbes at least 500 to 1,000 varieties are there, if not more. It's that complex, and they're generating, or they have the ability, they may not be generating some chemicals, and that's the cause of a lot of our health conditions, that they are not able to generate, or we have lost that strain, or they're not enough quantity of that. Yeah. So the solution will be to revive that, and that's what we'll see in the next phase. How do we get back? What is a good, healthy gut microbiome? What can we do about it? But the reason to do it is to address some of our health conditions from the root cause. These health conditions are both physical and mental. As you saw, anxiety, depression, mood, very much related. Serotonin, dopamine, all are created here. The highest manufacturers are there. We think it's in the brain. No, it's in the gut. That's why gut is really the second brain. They are all connected. There are so many neurons. Our neural density in the gut is similar to that in our brain. It's that. So it's really the second brain. There is that many neurons, and they are directly connected. Actually, anatomically, I should say, there is a highway called the vagus nerve, which goes right from the gut to the brain. It's called as a highway because it's separate. Then it's a special nerve, a special nervous system, special anatomy which is made. That's why it's known as the highway. And it's a two-way highway. The brain informs the gut and the gut informs the brain. It's a two-way communication that's happening constantly. Yes, that explains the feeling. Gut controls the brain. Yes. Yes, Chaya, it explains our gut feeling. Exactly. It's that information. It's both ways, Sanjeev. I'll say gut controls the brain also controls the gut. It's two-way. But yeah, sometimes one overpowers the other. It's just saying that it's two-way. It's actually two-way. Yes, Asanthan, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we can come back to this later because I also think it's a very important topic in regard to what we've discussed. Since we spoke about the causes or the different pathways in which this is changed, what about the social, economic, structural, political causes, basically? All the junk food that's out there, all the crap that we're inhaling, eating, drinking, and all of the stress that's around. The simple stress in trying to find a place to stay, find a place to work, the societal tensions, the communalism, all of that. So what is it doing to our biome inside, basically?
Yeah. Oh, it's, I will see that all of this very adversely getting affected. So mental stress affects it very, very adversely. Diet, yeah, junk food or processed food very adversely affects. It rather promotes the bad bacteria and depletes the good bacteria. Definitely does that. Chemicals, exposure, air pollution does the same. Again, it depletes bacteria in our biome everywhere. The inhaling part might affect more the lung, but indirectly it affects even the gut because there is a connection. There is a way the gut and the lung interact in terms of their own information. Yeah. But yeah, all of that does. And that's the reality. It is that way right now. It is that way right now. So we have to be even more careful about some of these things for ourselves and
yeah,
for
I think
others.
Dr. Geber-Mate talked about this as well at length. How all of the terminal illnesses these days are actually caused by how our society is kind of wired and structured. Stress is manufactured. And all of that stuff. Trauma is manufactured, yeah.
Trauma is manufactured. Yeah, Geber-Mate talks a lot about the link with trauma. I haven't heard him on microbiome, but yeah, trauma is definitely driven by all of these. And that trauma affects the microbiome. So trauma does affect the microbiome. That's like mental stress of a different level. The trauma plays a big role with the vagus nerve. So what it communicates through the vagus nerve, that's where the brain's communication to the gut, that's through the vagus nerve. That's where the trauma, the stress, that affects the microbe. And so the microbe change their functioning, their processing based on that signal of our mental state that is there. It does. Good. Okay, so let's get to both a little bit of what affects and hence what can we do. So what is a healthy microbiome, right? So there again, simple message, essence is diversity, right? Essence is diversity. Just like I want you to leave, it's very simple. In some ways, it's very simple. Just like what is the function of the microbiome? Don't get lost. Just imagine it as chemical factories. Very simple analogy, it works. Mostly it will work. And same way, what do I take? Diversity. The variety is the key here. It's not about this particular. So even when you will come across one of the solutions is probiotics, it's not about this bacterial strain or that bacterial strain. It's diversity. Now they are finding that if you have diversity, some of the strains which may not seem to be there, they regenerate because they are in low quantities. But once they get the right environment, as you are promoting diversity of any kind, then they will also regenerate. So you may introduce some bacterial strain, but others also grow because you're doing other stuff which is encouraging the microbiome. So don't bother too much about which strain, but it's really the diversity is the key. And when we say diversity, what it means is the number of different species of microbes present and their distribution. So typically 1,000 odd is what is said as good or desirable. And there is a way to test it. People who are interested, I think there are some agencies in India also now that do it. It's typically done through a stool test. And that's why this is the most studied microbiome. It's not others are not important. This is the only one which is most studied because it's very easy. All you need is a stool sample, right? And a lot of places stool samples are home collected. Like they send you a envelope, you give your sample, you courier it, and the lab will send you a report. That's happening in India as well. I think outside also it happens. Most of the clinical trials research has happened like this. It's just home-based samples being sent, and they are able to see what is happening by analyzing that. So it's a very quote unquote relatively easier sample analysis to do. And one of the key metrics is the diversity. How diverse is this? How many quote unquote types of bacteria, microbe, or virus are there? What's that variety? Because that gives an indication of what's the sort of health, what all functions you can perform, what all chemical factories are active in your system. That's why different variety is the key. Does that make sense now? Like looking at the background of their role and why this diversity is the key, right? So we can do more and more functions. That's what it is really about. Now, how, right? So this is sort of the full set of things, and we'll go one by one. So pharmaceuticals is on the red side, right? So they actually deplete. And I think here the rule which sort of I feel like I come around is that antibiotics are meant for life-saving situations. That's how they were created 100 years ago. They are not preventive for viral infections. That's how, at least in India, we see a lot of use. Self-prescription, very common, very easily popped and used. And particularly, they have found certain antibiotics in children have very adverse reactions. The fluoroquinolones, all those very adverse reactions in children because their gut microbiome is just getting formed and it starts getting affected very early on if you use too many antibiotics early on in children. So, yeah, so it's very, again, judicious use. We can't say stop them because they are life-saving. Now we have very threatening bacteria also. So we need to be sure we can protect ourselves. That's the reality of today. I think 1,000 years ago, probably it was different. There were there used to be these plagues, etc., which would kill millions of people at that time. And that sort of brought in a lot of these antibiotics, and that's been the last almost 100 years. Similarly, PPIs are shown to disrupt some of this gut microbiome also. These are also quite often used. So again, judicious use, right? Again, they have a role to play. All medicines have a role to play. I think just be judicious about it when you really need it, knowing that they do affect this part, this organ of your body. The other is geography. I think this is what Paras was saying. Geography in the sense, I would say different environments and people we interact with increase our diversity, right? So that's one of the reasons when we go to nature, I think I am now seeing one of the reasons we really like it is because we get fresh, almost new kind of bacteria. In different places, it will be different. You go to a different park, it will be different. You go to obviously a different country, a different kind of forest, it will be different. Different places, very different, and you get different exposures. And now they have done like trials, you can say, or testing to this extent that that a person gave his sample before, went to a different place 3 days, came back, and again did a stool test, for example, right? Different. They found that the diversity increased by 20% in that 2 or 3 day time frame also. right? So just interacting with the people, a different kind of people, new people that you're interacting with, can increase that. Going to new places will increase that. And definitely being in nature, different aspects of nature, it will increase that. Similarly, interaction with pets. So they've again tested, particularly for children, they have found when children or families who've grown with pets have a different microbiome. Very, very different, more diverse, more, because again, there is constant exchange. We may know it, not know it, there is a constant exchange. Pets will go out, they will bring their own stuff, they will have their own stuff, and that is happening. That exchange is happening, and it builds immunity. In children, they found it builds immunity quite a bit. Playing in sand, barefoot walking, playing in dirt. So all this increases, this improves. So diet is one, we'll come to it the last, but I wanted to highlight all of these different aspects as well, which improves our gut microbiome and makes it healthier. And hence this is required, what I think Paras was asking, right? A balance in sanitation, hygiene, and and enabling our gut microbiome, right? So how much we say, all right, don't go in the sand, how do we prevent ourselves, like barefoot is bad, or how much we expose ourselves, our children to it, to what extent, and to hold back how much, right? And maybe if there is, start slow. If you're feeling tentative, you can start slow. Start with saying barefoot walking at home, right? Maybe if not full, start with 10 minutes, 20 minutes. See how does that feel to you, right? That touch, that exposure, how is that feeling, right? Then maybe go slowly. So again, ease into it, but keep that intention to become sort of friendly, to start becoming one with the environment, with your own microbiome, to be in yoga with it. And that will help again develop. So there is a journey, there is a process. I think there are some studies that say that don't do it in a rushed way, right? Again, be gentle with yourself, do it with comfort, do it with ease. Sthir sukham asanam, right? Again, do it with sthirta, with sukh, whatever is comfortable. Don't push yourself, but keep that intention, keep adding a little bit wherever you are. And that will keep increasing that diversity within you. Arjun, you had a question? You had a hand up or a comment?
Yeah, I think it was related to what we were just speaking. That to what extent, like we should like for example, washing hands with soap before every meal. So to what is the right balance to it?
So I think right balance is what you will figure out for yourself. Wherever you are, keep the intention, keep trying, keep an open mind, and try and see. If people who have been around me or gone for meals, and you may, if you now meet me and see also, I don't wash my hands before me. I haven't for the longest time now. In touch wood, I've been okay. But that doesn't make it right for everybody, right? So you have to find your balance. And slowly expose yourself. Start exposing. If you are and go with what is comfortable to you. Don't again go immediately, because it will disrupt, right? That microbiome also has to evolve now. If it's gone down, it has to evolve. It will take its time, and give it that time. Just like everything else, with ease. Sthir sukh asanam. Do it that way. It's sthirtha, with ease. Very important. Yeah, I hope that answers yes. Yes, Paras, then Sanjeev.
Andy, just to share, and I didn't do much study before implementing this, but I was having a lot of dandruff and skin problems. And basically, one time I was like, okay, I'm just washing myself like crazy every day. So I just one day stopped using like shampoo and all that, and like, soap because, you could probably just be fine. It's been 2 years now, and I don't use soap or anything much unless like, I've had like some grease or I'm working or like, something. And it's been fine. Like I don't have any dandruff anymore, and my skin is also fine. So I just wanted to share my personal experience, although it wasn't grounded in the study beforehand.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah, that's the best. Experience is what matters the most. Theory is okay. Theory has to fit the experience. So it fits. That's good. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Yes, Sanjeev. You're on mute, sir. You're on mute.
I was gonna say, I had similar experience with shampoo to what Paras described. By reducing the shampoo, it's kind of has helped. But the other thing I was saying is that for gut microbiomes, like we talked about diet and all, but water plays a very, very important role in, because it can quickly change your gut microbiomes, and that's why it can help you change also. But at the same time, when your body is not ready, that
Yes.
same water which everybody is consuming is not gonna suit you.
Yes.
So but with with the clever understanding, water can be used as a,
Yeah.
in a medicine in its own way to change gut microbiomes.
Totally, totally. But water is the most trickiest, like you said. It's the
Yeah,
most potent, I think. It can make the best,
yeah,
but also harm the most.
yeah,
And it's
yeah, yeah.
very tricky in today's environment. Yeah. But we'll talk about the diet part a little bit. Thanks for bringing up water. Yes, Andy?
So I wanted to kind of test this perspective, and I think I know what you're going to say, but I'm curious to hear more. Uh, so I think of all of this as a system in which several different factors are interacting, and in most of the microbiome related conversations that I've heard or content that I've come across, there's sort of a focus on food, but I think food is one pillar
Yes.
of what needs to be managed. I think for me, I think the three pillars that have made the most substantial difference in my life are just nutrition, exercise, and sleep. And I think we often tend to like not spend as much time looking at what the correlation might be between some of those factors and how that might be impacting the state of the system. So I was curious first if that's aligned with your experience, and secondly, from a perspective of like everything that you have dug into, is there any study that has sort of looked at that and what the correlations are there?
So definitely, and we'll just coming there. So in the microbiome, though, I think what I found nutrition, exercise, sleep, definitely, I think we'll see all three coming up now. But in the microbiome, the interesting thing a lot was for me also that this environment plays a huge role. The interaction we have with the environment, right, with the nature, with pets, all those also add to our diversity of the microbiome. So nutrition, exercise, sleep, yes, definitely. And all three are coming up right after this. In the microbiome, this was another interesting thing for me, which was very different and sort of for me gave some quote unquote, I think, explanation for the experience that when you go in nature, how sort of that pleases you, right? It just changes your mood many times, right? It just and improves your health. There is so much, and Garima does this most beautiful work on, right? The institute also of how nature can be the healer, and this is sort of giving one pathway to that, saying how really like water. What Sanjeev was saying, you go in natural water. If you are near a clean river, there is, I think, nothing like that river to heal you, right? But now, unfortunately, a lot of the rivers have gotten polluted again. So that's why the water becomes tricky. When you go to a natural river, you be in the rain, you soak yourself in the rain, fresh rain, not the fresh first rain, after that, because the fresh rain is filled with dust and all. But after that, in monsoon, it's just such a wonderful experience in just doing that. And and this is giving to me a pathway and explanation for that experience as well. But yeah, nutrition, exercise, sleep, all three super critical for the microbiome as well. And huge correlation, as you said. I don't know whether you're asking for correlation between the three or between these three with the microbiome.
These three with the microbiome.
Yeah, totally. And this is the additional one in this. I think that's the interesting thing. And I think you have already benefited, which I know with your pets that you have and your your own expeditions in nature. So
I think Sandeep, that good point about the water, what you were saying, like clean river and rainwater. What really happening is in lifestyle is that we have water, infected water, then pure clean water, I mean, treated water to make it
Treated
clean,
water.
but it's
Yeah.
not the same as the actual.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately, in the RO process, for example, a lot of the useful minerals go away from water. In the
Yeah.
making it bacteria free, the useful bacteria also go away from water, right? So there is that water has both. It has bacteria which is good for us and the bacteria which is not healthy. Now to remove the unhealthy bacteria, we're removing everything.
Yeah. We're losing the, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good. Sita said, my mother at 85 still drinks sack water. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
And
Good.
that means she has the diversity, the diverse. Yeah.
Oh, good. Paras, you had a good pediatrician. Very nice. Good. Let her snuggle with the cat. Excellent. Andy, did your question get answered or?
Yes, they did.
Yes. Good. Anyway, let's go there now. So we've seen the geography part or the sort of environment, the role it plays. Life cycle changes are basically it's how we age, what we do, those habit changes. I'm not talking of these two yet. We'll see if there is more interest. I'll talk about the birthing process and the infant feeding. But the more practical, I think, very useful directly for us right now is the stress part, right? So exercise, movement has a positive effect on the microbiome. So this is again established that does help. Exercise does help with the microbiome, increasing the diversity. Again, hopefully, so clubbing this with the other, exercising in the outdoors, you can see how that can be so much more beneficial than doing inside a gym. In the gym, it does, but doing it outdoor will make it even more beneficial, right? Mental stress reduces diversity. Again, this is what Santan was asking. All the stress just of finding a home, our mental state, how the gut-brain axis from the brain that is affecting the gut, right? That signal is going to our microbiome, the mental state, right? If we are stressed, and that sometimes hence can create a vicious loop, but it can also hence create a virtuous loop. So you can see this two-way direction between our gut and brain has this possibility of a virtuous cycle or a vicious cycle. And that choice is where our intervention or our conscious effort can go. Right? In choosing to say, can I create virtuous cycles of mood and my gut rather than vicious ones, right? If vicious is there, can I intervene and stop it before it becomes a cycle? Right? And again, last but not the least, sleep. Sleep patterns have found direct link with the microbiome activity. In fact, one of the studies they found that there are different microbes in our body which have their own circadian rhythm. So when our sleep gets disturbed, our circadian rhythm gets disturbed, right? And so that disturbs the microbiome activity because it disturbs the microbes' circadian rhythm. So it's at that level, right? Andy, more specific, right? This is what you are asking, I guess, very clearly. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very close link with sleep. So sleep is again very important. And more studies, even in, for example, weight loss, obesity, they have found sleep is so important. So sleeping well reduces weight. And this is again possibly a connection that again scientists are trying to discover that when you sleep well, your microbial activity is good, so your digestion is good, your metabolism is good, so you will lose weight. Your diabetes will get better. Your hypertension will get better. Your GERD will get better because your microbes will function better. Yeah, making sense till here? Before we get into dietary recommendations, that's the next part. Again, pausing here, seeing if there are questions on the rest of this circle, because diet is a whole new slide because it needed that type of attention. So I've kept a separate slide for it. But on this slide, anything else?
I have a question on sleep. And you say sleep pattern. Is it about like just sleeping on time, like a certain time, or is it the duration, the quality of sleep? And then very recently, I've been talking to a person about how in India, especially in Rajasthan, right? People used to take like the nap in between the day because it's so hot to be outside versus like here, you have to just push and like, until you crash. So when you say sleep pattern,
Sleep, I think what my understanding with sleep is when they say, I haven't looked at that specific paper, but when they say sleep cycle and they're referring it to the circadian rhythm, it's mapping yourself more closely to the solar cycle, right? We are meant to sleep when it's dark, not stay awake, and we are meant to stay awake when there is sunlight, and then still getting enough sleep, right? So sleep 7, whatever is needed for each individual, anywhere between what I've understood 6 to 8 hours of sleep, but whatever you need. So it won't be again like a set norm. You should sleep in the day. It's good for everybody. No, it's in Rajasthan based on the weather there. So you have to be in tune with the environment, what is needed. But the basic rhythm is, and that's linked to, I think, serotonin, if I'm not mistaken, one of the key again neurotransmitters, which is generated from the gut, again from our microbiome, right? So that sort of is affecting the whole cycle. So staying up till 4 in the morning and then waking up at 12, those kinds of things, that 8 hour is very different than sleeping at 9, waking up at 5. It's just not the number of hours of sleep. I think it has to do with this time also.
yeah, makes sense. Although where I am, it becomes very hard to maintain any cycle because in the summertime, the sun sets at like 9:30 and up at 4:30, and in the winter time, it's dark at 4:30 and sun doesn't come out till 7. So,
Yes.
but topic for a one-on-one.
Yes. Whatever we can do, we can only try our best. Yes, Andy.
Just one thing I want to chime in on, which is sort of paraphrasing something that Sandeep says in a lot of different workshops. We all have a wonderful lab, which is our body and our life. And I think in a lot of these things, just trust your experience and like see what works for you. Like, and sleep is sort of one of those things where you have to figure out what your cycle is. And it doesn't have to be a rigid thing. I think Paras, similar to you, similar experience, and it's totally fine for the sleep cycle to be different in different seasons.
Yeah. Yes, Shivani.
So Sandeep, I had this question from what you recommended about, going outdoors and being exposed to bacteria and everything. I've gotten ill a couple of times, and I was actually thinking that, oh, maybe I'm going to gym, and gym is, very unhygienic because, one time I've gotten COVID from there, one time I've gotten sick, and also the fact that, there is a school of thought, especially amongst the parents' generation, ki, street food khao and then immunity badhegi and everything, and have the whatever golgappas and everything. And I thought that, oh, maybe I had that golgappa and that the bacteria exposure over there that is wreaking havoc. So now when you're saying that you should expose yourself to bacteria, is it only in such environment, or like it's a bit confusing? Ki, should we like expose ourselves to the bacteria? And because I was actually being like, okay, now I need to be extra cautious about exposure to bacteria. And I was actually being, just like the COVID time, I was obsessively washing my hands each and every time I could get, whether I'm touching dogs or feeding cats or anything.
Yes. Yeah, as I said, I think do it gently with yourself. So if keep the intention of exposing, but do it at the pace, at the place where it's easiest, comfortable for you, it's with ease. Water or anything, that's why food, those are the trickiest because they do have an overload and they affect. So if you have to build your immunity first on this, go with more external exposure would be my suggestion. So things like air, nature, walks, that kind of thing. The food, particularly outside, etc., is a lot more trickier. Slowly you will build there. And I think coming up next is things like probiotics, prebiotics, your own diet. That itself will help you build this diversity in your microbiome. And that can be a good starting point as well, instead of directly street food.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Thanks. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Ruchika, you had something you wanted to add? I think you were muted.
No, it's fine. I think it's covered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we are coming to the dairy part now with the nutrition. So there's somebody with an S as their name. So sorry, I don't know who it is. So, but welcome. If you could share who you are, that would be good.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, this is Sarabjit here.
Okay. Hi, Sarabjit. Good to have you. Okay, so let's get to
Thank you.
the topic around food and nutrition, or even or supplements. So I put that together, diet. So nobody asked, but I think very quick overview at the highest level: birthing process, infant feeding method. So this is when sort of, I think why it's here is also because this is when the microbiome of a child is getting formed. So the basic understanding right now is science, from scientific point of view, in the womb, there is no microbiome. So child has nothing. It's a very sterile environment. When the child is born, that is the first exposure. And so the birthing process, as in either a vaginal birth or a cesarean, has a very different exposure. And some of the scientists believe that vaginal birth has a very important part, because what the bacteria, the microbiome of the vagina is what the child is getting exposed to through the skin, and it's very important. So one of the interviews of a scientist or a doctor I was seeing, his wife had to have a cesarean because of the complication. So what they did was, after that, they bathed the child in the vaginal fluid. Right? They wanted to make sure the child, so he was that serious about this. I'm not sure where the evidence is on it, but that's one of the same. And same is with the feeding, whether bottle feeding or breastfeeding. Again, that has a very different exposure. Again, breast milk or formula milk. When do you switch? So all of these choices, you can see, has a choice, will have a different in terms of what's the microbiome exposure, right? That the person, that the child has, and accordingly, what's the microbiome they will develop, because it starts like a blank slate. It's blank at the time of birth or just about to birth. So in the womb, it's blank. That's the understanding right now. And then the exposure starts. And that exposure is what builds the microbiome. Okay. Good. So Paras has shared his experience on that as well. So good. Thank you, Paras, on the chat. And let's move to the food part. So now food and supplements are divided in three categories broadly. So prebiotic, probiotic, and what I'll call as antibiotic. This is not necessarily medicines, but also food. So prebiotic is that which supports existing good bacteria grow. So this doesn't have bacteria itself, but this is what supports the bacteria that we have, the good bacteria, to grow, to take more space, and hence automatically some of the bad bacteria going out of our system. And that goes out through our stool again, right? Almost 30 to 50% of our stool, our excretion is bacteria, dead bacteria. So what are those? So examples of those are fiber-rich food, right? So, and this is where they have found plant-based is better than animal products. So fiber-based food mean stuff like vegetables, fruits. And it's because the bacteria, the symbiotic bacteria within us, their food is fiber. So they consume fiber. So if you give them more fiber, more bacteria will grow. It's again the law of nature, right? You have a plant, you give it water, sunlight, fertilizer, it will grow. So the fertilizer, the growth ingredient for these good bacteria is fiber. So fiber is not only just good for stuff like constipation. The real use of fiber is actually a big part is this, right? It improves. That's something that I learned. For me, fiber was always associated with constipation, clearing your stomach, etc. But the big benefit of fiber is in growing your good bacteria, good microbiome in your, because this is what their food is. And this is what they use. They use the fiber. So the skin of the apple, for example, of the fruit, that is fiber. It will use that to generate the chemicals, the hormones, the neurotransmitters, the vitamins that you need. So that's the process. And that's why this fiber is important. So if you are taking soup, a vegetable soup, don't try not to filter it out. Oh, chhano mat, we chan lete hain ki bhai the fiber is out, then you only have the soup. Or same with the juice. If you make a juice, keep the fiber, keep the pulp as much as you can, because that's what this microbiome needs to generate the chemicals that you need. right? The hormone, the neurotransmitter, the vitamins, the short chain fatty acids, all that we saw. Makes sense? Why fiber is good in this? Clear? And very practical, right?
Yes.
With juices, with soups, all of that. Yes, Sarabji? No.
No, I said yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. And in this plant-based, animal products anyway have less fiber. Plant-based is where more fiber is there. So anyway, that is better. Then in things like protein, they have found whey and mung bean-based protein to be more beneficial, while casein and even soya can have a detrimental effect. So that's where the dairy or any animal product will have a detrimental effect on the microbiome. And this is at the protein level, at the casein level. I'm not counting the steroid, the antibiotics, all that is there in most milk that we take. So even if you get the purest organic milk, if it has casein in it, that protein doesn't work as well for the microbiome as moong protein, lentils, again, what is there in plant-based stuff. And again, soya protein, soya is seen as a good alternate, but excess, again, high concentrations has its own problems. So it's okay again in quantities. We found even cultures which had soya is low quantities. Indian culture, it's more recent that we have milk at this quantity. Earlier, milk was more a symbol of prestige. It was even ghee was a symbol of prestige, of prosperity. So it wasn't very high in our culture. Ghee was used, ghee has been more there in Ayurvedic culture, and it's more in the medicinal value. That's what I have seen. It's more as a delivery agent. So a lot of things which are not water soluble or fat soluble are delivered dissolved in ghee because ghee is good fat. Other stuff is dissolved in water. What cannot be dissolved in water is dissolved in ghee and given as a medicine. So like you would give that, make that laddu of turmeric and neem because they don't dissolve in water. So I make it in ghee and then its bioavailability goes up. So ghee was 100-year-old, ghee is better. It gets richer with time. So ghee is very different and milk or dairy consumption is very different. Even in fact, a lot of cultures in India, like in Maharashtra, I know, Karnataka, even with children, they don't give milk. They give ragi, millets, right? That is far more beneficial than milk. So even children, they haven't given, they don't give milk. So milk is a much more recent thing even in our culture than we think it was. Okay. Any other questions? Ruchika, does this answer your question around dairy?
Yes, but I think I have another question. I think my
Sure.
question was slightly different. It wasn't so much how do we get those microbiomes, but is it the fact that we're having currently problems with dairy is also related to that certain microbiomes are deficient, right? That are leading us to be able to process it less. Like for example, yogurt has a lot of good supposedly probiotic
Yes.
bacteria.
Yes.
So that's more my question is that the fact that we're not able to, or it seems like either it's just that we are more aware of these things. So that's, which came
So
before the
yeah,
chicken or
yeah.
the egg situation.
Okay, so that's the question. So dairy has the digestion of dairy, right, has a very different history. So the history is 10,000-year-old. So 10,000-year-old, there was famine, a big famine which lasted multiple years in three parts of the world. North India in the around that Indus, in Western Europe and in some part of Africa. And it was a famine where the only thing that was available to locals there ended up being dairy. So it is sort of understood that sort of some research has indicated few handful or 100 kind of people survived those famine who had this specific gene mutation which could process lactose or lactase, the protein, the enzyme. That gene mutation was there which could generate lactase, and those are the people who survived that famine. And so that's sort of those descendants are the ones who can. And the others actually don't have the gene to generate lactose. So they are lactose intolerant. So that's why you see a lot of Eastern Asia cultures, etc., don't have that. And North India culture is where the highest premium to
Yeah.
dairy in India, right? Because, and you can
Yeah,
even,
like I'm from the north, like my family originally is from the north, and it's very part of our tradition to
yeah,
have
yeah. And you can
doodh and
imagine
dahi and all.
for those 200 people who survived only because of dairy, this became the currency, right? Dairy is the currency. Cows is your currency now. It gets elevated to that level. So even again in
Yeah, that
Africa,
makes
many
sense.
can't. I think Native Americans also can't. So it is a very specific mutation which actually enables. It's not the microbiome. So if that's your question, it's not that. Now, dairy will come to yogurt separately. Yes, yogurt is what we will see good. Fermented foods is one of the recommended items. Again, but
Yeah.
and I think what curd does is it does remove casein out of it. So curd, the process of making curd itself,
Changes the protein. Yeah. It changes
yeah,
the type of protein.
yeah, it changes the whole texture, the whole mixture, the whole composition of the dairy that we have. So when you have curd or buttermilk, it's even next level difference, right? So it is very different than when we say milk, having milk itself. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And one of the thumb rules one can say is one way of seeing this diversity. So remember, our goal is to increase diversity. So through our diet, one norm people will start giving is 30 different kind of plants in a week, or at least different colors in a plate or in the week also. And the different colors is again because different colors indicate different ingredients which different bacteria need. So each color is linked to a chemical, I think polyphenol or something. And different bacteria need different polyphenols to survive. So when you have different colors, you have yellow capsicum, you have a green lady's finger or something, then you are giving it different ingredients. So different bacteria will survive. Same is true for different cereals. So you can have ragi one day, jawar, bajra, as you diversify and not stick with only wheat or brown rice, etc. That will again increase this diversity. So in a sort of week, 30 varieties. That's like per day on an average 4 or 5 different varieties. So you can change the cereal, you can change the dal if you're having that, you can change the fruits, the vegetables. All that will give a different variety.
Sandeep, why are they saying nowadays that multigrain atta is not good? Until some time back, people were into multigrain atta, and now there's like this fad that again says that we shouldn't take multigrain, and it's better to
Yes.
combine maybe two
Yeah. So
at
now
most.
the understanding, at least from an Ayurveda standpoint, is that different attas or different grains are processed differently. Different enzymes are needed to process it. So it's good to take different grains, but in different meals. In the same meal, when it goes, then it can sort of work very differently in terms of how we digest or absorb it. Sometimes even the pH has to be different, slightly. So it's better to have, it's good to have different grains, but in different meals, not together. That's sort of my understanding of the reason for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So now let's move to probiotic. If there are more questions, I will stay, but there is sort of time. We are at time. I thought today I had very little content. So probiotic. So prebiotic is what? Which supports existing good bacteria. Probiotic is that which adds new strains of bacteria. It will typically have live bacteria of certain strains. So it's adding, it's increasing your diversity now. It's providing more bacteria live itself to your gut. There are many ways to do it, but through our diet, it's done a lot through fermented food. So idli dosa batter, yogurt or curd, kanji, dhokla, these are what I came up with. I am not a chef cook. I have read some, but there are many here. So you can feel free to add from again cultures. Each culture I know in India has many. So please feel free to add more if you know of more stuff. I think in West there is more now. Even different cultures there like kimchi, sauerkraut. These are some I have seen that come from US. Yeah, kimchi is very popular in US. Sauerkraut is something they do with cabbage and more. Any others? People, cooks, chefs around? Any ideas you have? Madhuri, you were saying something in Maharashtra that's done.
Yeah, something called ambil with ragi.
Okay.
Then ambo is very similar like dosas and
Okay.
all.
Good. Yeah. Varsha is saying
And
pickles.
also like in the north we have the gobi gajar shalgam achar during
Yes.
winter time.
Yes, they can. Yeah.
Yeah.
They have to be pickled, right? They have to be allowed to ferment. Sometimes it's without fermentation, what I understand. Yeah. Yes, good.
Similar
Yeah.
to kanji conceptually and how it's fermented,
Okay.
because it's fermented in the sun
Okay.
by
Yes.
exposure to sun.
Yeah. That has to be given. Yes. That's important. So horseradish, rabri, yes, good. Jalebi. Madhuri is saying jalebi also. So this is okay.
Maybe good
But
news for you.
good news, but hopefully then finally not in processed sugar, because we'll see that's an antibiotic. Okay, good. Thank you, yeah, for that clarification. Also not rabri, but rabri. Okay. And then when you take supplements, so there are probiotic supplements also. It's good to see the bacteria strains, again, to see the diversity in them that is there. So that's there. Now, antibiotics which harm, which destroys good bacteria and or increases harmful bacteria, those are antibiotics. Let's call them. So these are some: alcohol, tobacco, processed sugar. These are clear antibiotics, like they will destroy the good bacteria and they promote the bad bacteria. So processed sugar, white sugar is like very good fertilizer for bad bacteria and a pesticide for good bacteria. Let's put it that way. Very simple. So everything same with processed food, artificial ingredients, artificial sweeteners, chemicals in the air, in the water. I think what Sayantan was also talking about is gone. Okay. Yeah. So that also, that increases all of this. Again. Yes. So these are what are antibiotics. So clearly these are to avoid. These are what we can add in whatever way we can. Yes, sir.
So good and honey as such is not like in any way not an antibiotic. Eh?
No, good in that less processed, in the most won't be. It has many things. Honey has to be careful. Again, processed honey is not great. I think nowadays what we get typically in the market is very processed. It's heated, in fact, and that spoils the honey. You have to really go for raw forest honey to be really sure of that. Then it's good. So a lot of honey we get has added sugar also now. So you have to be really careful with honey. But yeah, otherwise it would be okay. So definitely not preheated. That's something to be careful. Yeah, fermented alcohols not. This is a common question. No, alcohol is alcohol. It has a lot of very easy carbohydrate for this. So yeah, I don't know again. Natural wines, all the quote unquote people I have heard, this is a question asked to them, particularly in the US as well, that it doesn't work. Any kind of alcohol is better avoided unless it's, I don't know, some traditional means really, which is preserving. So you'll have to be really careful and picky and choosy and really know what that is like, how that is made. And
Yeah, just I think the fermentation, there's a byproduct. So like, there's a very popular drink called kombucha,
yes,
which is also has a lot of probiotics, and the kombucha is like has maybe 0.5% or 1% alcohol, just as a byproduct of that fermentation. Same with rabri also. So
sure. Yes, ACV, you're saying, Sanjeev, something? You're on mute, sorry.
Apple cider vinegar
Okay,
that
yes.
is fermented.
Yeah. So in these, some of these, what I understood from those talks that I heard of the experts, they were saying in each of these, there are both varieties, including pickles, vinegar. Some are just made, they are not fermented. So when you buy, they were saying, look at the label very clearly. And a good test, they were saying that if it's in the cold shelf, then it's probably fermented. If it's not in the cold shelf, it's not fermented or something like that. So it's definitely worth looking at. And the closer it is in your hand, in your control, or you understand the process, the better, because fermentation is a unique process. Good. Great. So that brings us to the end. I'm okay today, good on time. So this is a summary of what all it will do. Good bacteria. So I'll leave you. I think it's all everything we discussed. All of these axes will be good. Slowly things will come to what they call an eubiosis from dysbiosis, where it gets healthy. our metabolism improves, inflammation goes down, insulin sensitivity increase, digestion improves, vitamin production improves, immune response improves, body fat deposition decreases, so obesity comes down, homeostasis improves, so all allergy reduces. So all that sort of will start happening. It's a process, it takes time, but it does happen. I leave this. Again, there are links to the papers. These are more specific things from that paper itself, the table, so you can use. I'm going to share this slide and just leave you with this thought. Again, coming back, I think to all this, not getting lost, I think in these recommendations, particularly on diet, it's very appealing. We latch on to this diet thing very easy. It seems easy to implement, but do it with yoga, right? So again, ask this question, who am I? Where is this microbiome different than me? It may have a different DNA, very diverse DNA, but it's in living in symbiosis with this microbiome,
Yeah.
which is essential to our survival. Yes, and once we start doing that, we sync up, our gut and brain syncs up, right? Our conscious and the subconscious syncs up. Once we start accepting this bacteria, this virus as being part of our system, not seeing them as enemies. That's how we have grown up. We have seen them as enemies. That's most of our education. That's what every doctor has told us. But starting to see their role in our survival, in our well-being, and then seeing them very much part of us, of integrating with us. Everywhere, new place you go, there is bacteria. Every time you interact with a pet, there is bacteria. Every time you interact with a plant, you are outside, there is stuff. And at least seeing, again, do it at your pace. I'm reminding that don't rush into it. Do it at your pace because it has to work with your system in the current state. But keep that intention in the mind to integrate. Who am I? Am I really, this is a question itself, right? Am I this DNA that I have, or is it, because as we saw, there is more microbial DNA in us, 150 times more than our own DNA. There are 3 times more cells in us of these microbes. Right? So whatever you do, all the interventions, do it with that spirit is my suggestion, to integrate with them, to be one with them, to be in yoga with them, to be aligned with them, with the microbiome. Thank you. Thank you for attending. With that, I'll close. I'll be around for more questions if they are there. We'll close with our prayer and I'll stay around. So yeah, request everyone to sit comfortably. You're on a chair, let your feet be comfortably on the ground, your back supported. Gently close your eyes, bring your attention to your breath. Notice the air going in and out. You know there is some microbe is going in with it as well, becoming one with it. Repeat after me. May all be sukhi, khush, joyful.
May all be sukhi, khush, joyful.
May all be swasth, sehatmand, healthy.
May all be
May all be swasth, sehatmand, healthy.
May all be in shanti, sukoon, peace.
May all be in shanti, sukoon, peace.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I'm around if there are more questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do have a
Okay.
question about the upcoming workshops. When do you plan to have like one on psychology? Because there was one very interesting one on psychology that you do, but I couldn't attend the last one. Do you
Yes.
plan? I know you're traveling to the US. I saw that in the group. So, are you
No,
planning to do that after the trip, maybe?
no. I'm doing workshops while I'm traveling to the US. So my sessions are continuing.
Okay.
First workshop I'll do across 3 time zones, so that will be interesting for me. But what workshop happens when is sort of decided by the team. So Garima and Sujata, so they will decide and it will be announced. So I am there. So whatever they
Okay.
ask me to do, I'll do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Great. Thank you.
Let them know that you are interested in it. So that might always we need a quorum to start. So if there are enough people interested in a particular workshop, they will announce.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Sandeep.
Thank you. Yeah, there's Arjun's hand is up.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Arjun, you want to ask something? Your hand is up.
Yeah, so Sandeep, like the way if we expose ourselves to different environments and we get good bacteria, but isn't there a downside also where we might also get things that our body might not be able to handle? An example that comes to my mind is that a colleague of mine had gone to South America, and I don't know, maybe ate something, and through that, once he returned back, he was in a very serious condition, and the doctor said that he has been infected with something that is there only in South America, and Indians cannot process that kind of bacteria or something. So how do we balance that? Uh,
Yeah, I think that's exactly the question. How do we balance that? And that's through, as I said, start with what you can, wherever you are, what works for your system right now, what doesn't overload you at your pace. And yeah, take it one step at a time. Don't rush into it. So if you are not used to, as I said, start with barefoot at home. Start with barefoot in the garden around you. Start sitting, spending more time in the garden next to you. Because you are definitely getting exposed to it every day. You're increasing the load now, less likely to harm you. As you slowly do some of these things around nutrition, around diet, what can help. Some, I would say, probiotic supplements are not bad. They're good. Try that again to build slowly. And as you do that, it will build that capacity. It will definitely build that. So one of the things I didn't talk about, for example, there are viruses. We talked mostly a lot of the bacteria, but there are viruses which are called as bacteriophages. So viruses eat bacteria. That's been there like 3 billion or sort of 1.5, 2 billion-year-old fight between bacteria and virus that exists. So viruses eat bacteria. So there is an automatic equilibrium which our microbiome can have if we have those viral strains, right? So we can develop that. So again, that's part of our immune response. But sometimes we don't have them. We haven't built them enough. So that can be one. But it's not like we go seeking it. It will happen. And it will happen at the pace but at least be open to it, right? Start exposing yourself in whatever way feels comfortable to you. For example, still, I do wash my hands after going to the washroom. So that's one I have kept. I haven't let go of that yet, right? So that's the one I have still kept. So I haven't still exposed myself to that. I don't feel certain. So it's finding your own boundary where it is right now, where you are comfortable. But the only thing is to start saying, okay, it's okay to push it a little. Can I stay on the edge? Can I push? Can I keep growing? Can I keep expanding? Not say, this is it. Yeah, but gently, again, be at your own pace.
And I'm speaking from experience here. A few years back, I spent a few months in Europe, and it was in the winter time, and I picked up a very bad I don't know whether it was flu or what it was, but it was like a cold and cough and a very severe bout of cold and cough. And at first, like how it is in Europe, when you go to the general practitioner, they will never give you antibiotics there. They just tell you to take paracetamol and that's it. So I did that for 2 weeks. I was coughing and I had like fever and I was very sick. Then finally, I managed to get a prescription for an antibiotic. I started the antibiotic, nothing worked. Then I changed the course of antibiotics. So I had like so I went to the specialist after the GP, and she changed my antibiotics also. So it was like more than a month, and I was constantly on medication and coughing and with fever and so on. And finally, the doctor in Europe, she told me that maybe you are just not adjusting uh, to the microbes here. Maybe your body is not used to it because you've never lived here before. I mean, you visited, but you've never lived. So maybe it's just that your body is not adapting to the microbes. And curiously enough, a few days later, when I traveled out of the country, and I came back to like my preferred habitats, I was fine. Like I just self-cured, So maybe sometimes a change of air, a change of location also cures us.
Yes, yes, sure. So environment is a big role. I think thanks for highlighting that again in this whole microbiome thing, besides food, exercise and rest or sleep. As I said, environment plays a big role. Big role. And I think hence gentle exposure, slow exposure is what we can handle usually. If it's too much, our system may get overwhelmed and then we have to figure out ways of coping with it. But environment plays a huge role. So yeah, that's a great example of that. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a good example. Yeah, Shawan is saying, do the microbiomes evolve completely over the years when we migrate to different geographical locations? I guess the genetic memory is retained or does it evolve? Yeah, so it does change. With the location they found that the microbiome, the mix changes, the diversity changes, how much of what changes. So it does change. And some of it might get very less if they are not encouraged in some ways with the fiber diet as well and what is there. So that is definitely there. Yes, US, India, travelers and back. I am coming to US, so let's see what happens.
Yeah.
But like people say that they fall sick in India. For me, it was the other way around. Like when I lived in Europe, I felt sick there, and for like 2 months, I was completely sick. And then when I came back, I was completely fine. Like, so for me, it was like the reverse process. So the reverse thing also works. That's what I tell people, that it's not just that people coming here fall sick. Sometimes when we go there, we also fall sick there. So it's
where your
maybe
home is,
something.
microbiome is settled too. So people living in the US when they come to
Yeah.
India, more likely, and people living in India going there, it's a new set of microbes and just adapting, giving ourselves the time and space also sometimes, and the openness to accept, integrate them. That can play a role, but sometimes none of that may work. The system may just get overwhelmed, and that's okay. That may also.
And also weather, I think weather also plays a key role. Like I don't remember whether I saw sunlight in your slides, but I think sunlight, personally to me, I think sunlight is like a big, like it's a medicine, at least for people who live in sunnier climates. Like when we go to a place with limited sunshine, that also impacts our health, isn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah. The circadian rhythm only goes for a toss with less sunlight. Yes, Paras.
Um, uh, we didn't talk much about like caffeine or tea.
Sorry, we didn't talk about
caffeine or tea. So anything you would like to say about those?
I have seen.
I've heard like mixed.
Yeah, it's been mixed still. So there are some teas that they have said have helped with the microbiome. Even I think coffee, but it's not holistic. So caffeine has other impact also. You'll have to see again, something which is good doesn't mean more of it is better. One in general, I think principle in biology is more is not better. If something is good, more of it doesn't make it better. I think that is always there. Biology, everything operates in between somewhere. Too less is bad, too much is more. You have to find what works for you. But I didn't find something very specific and clear, so I didn't mention it. I think Judy
By
might.
the way, on coffee,
Yeah.
what's your take on coffee? Because, like, not excess coffee is bad because of caffeine, but would you recommend having coffee in limited quantities? Like, is that good for us? Like, for me, I'm not a huge coffee drinker, but would you recommend like adding like a teaspoon once in a while to milk or whatever while drinking?
So milk itself is the problem for me. So dairy, we are not designed to have dairy after a certain age. Like after 2, only as children we are designed to have dairy. But yeah, coffee still, some black coffee without sugar, without milk is good. Can be good sometimes. I don't see a huge harm in it, is what I have come to understand. But it does affect our nervous system. So you have to be very careful about having caffeine in its own way, at what time of day, etc. So jury is still out. So caffeine is one of those things. I don't think there is complete clarity. But with milk and sugar, it's tricky if it's along. Shall we say
Sometimes, sometimes I think it
somebody has
also
talked
is
of.
what
Sorry, yeah.
I think sometimes it also is what else you are consuming with it too. Like you are eating one thing and then there is something else which is complementary. So it's kind of reducing the effect of it. So one thing doesn't apply to everybody too.
Yes.
That's like I have a friend who drinks coffee from Norway. He's from Norway. So since childhood he has been drinking coffee every day, one big this thing. No issues. So it's
Yeah.
how it has evolved.
I don't think 1 cup etc. वाले level पे issue वाला चीज है, at least from what I have read. It's
Yeah.
not like it's not like alcohol where
Yeah.
it will destroy your good bacteria and promote back bacteria.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
an
yeah.
antibiotic, definitely. But is it in a prebiotic, probiotic? There is some teas they are saying are good also, but somebody mentioned coffee
Yeah,
also,
yeah.
but not necessarily. So that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
And green tea, like there's a lot of hoo-ha on green tea.
Yeah.
Would you recommend green
So
tea?
green tea is like, there seem to be some benefit to green tea with microbiomes as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But again, in all biology, in all diet, as we saw here, it's not, if we say something is good, doesn't mean more of it is better. Sometimes more can be
Yeah.
harmful. Everything is in moderation. 1, 2, all diet, diversity is the key. Diversity is the key. There is no one superfood. There is no one thing which will fix everything. It is diversity. 30 plants in a week.
Okay.
Right? That's in general the thumb rule, the variety that you can have. That automatically we enforce moderation. Right? So there is nothing, one thing which you have every time. So if you do 30 plants, it will enforce diversity, it will enforce moderation. So that's sort of a more generic rule, I would say, not any one thing. So sometimes you have coffee, no problem. Sometimes you have tea, no problem. But anything in a habit, there is a chance that it will start creating some pattern of its own.
Okay. 30 is actually quite a high number. You make it sound easy, but 30 is very challenging. I don't think
30 is 4
mine would add up to.
No, but 30 is 4 a day, right? Or we have 3 meals.
30 different types? Like you mean 30 servings or 30 different types, like 30 varieties?
30 varieties. So, and that includes like cereal also. Like you can have ragi one day, flour, jawar, bajra. That is different varieties. You can have dals.
Not just vegetables.
Not vegetables.
Okay.
Plant
Not
based.
just vegetables.
Dal, fruits, vegetables.
Okay.
Fruits also is part. All plant based stuff.
Okay. That is doable. Thank you.
Sandeep, what would be a resource to kind of, figure out how to change the diet, especially in the US, like everything is like, animal based. And I
No?
was mostly vegetarian when I was in India, but like when you come to US, there are options, but like people eat salads and this and that, which doesn't work with like Indian palate. So, it's just kind of you try to do like force yourself, but eventually it's just not the equilibrium. So you end up like getting to the Indian diet, and the Indian food that we make at home, with the limited time we can figure out outside of the work is, roti and sabji. And so roti is just mostly like wheat flour, and sabji is like, yes, we can mix it up a little bit, but it's not as healthy as like, my mom used to make, or like we would naturally just at home in the farm, you just eat like seasonal, whatever there is. So what would be a good resource to start kind of like, building, thinking about like, how to eat while also, kind of managing like the macronutrients? Because I feel like Indian diet is very carb and like carb based, and there's sabji, but like how much sabji are you going to eat?
So that's how much sabji you eat is up to you. You can eat a lot of sabji, but that's what I end up doing. My dinner is only
Yeah.
sabji. I don't have any roti, nothing, no rice, none of the cereals in the dinner. But that being in India where everything is available, I don't know if I think there are millets also available in the US now. Millets have become a big thing.
Yeah.
So,
There's everything available. I think my question is like how to find that resources to like start maybe like,
so,
okay, this
This is a,
so my understanding is there is a US group in Swasth only, and there was a resource which was shared. So just ask again in the alumni group, somebody will bring it up.
yeah.
Particularly on food, because we have a whole workshop on food, the Ahar workshop, and they had compiled all resources for different people across as well. So I think they should be able to support, including in
I'll ask.
Sanjeev itself. I
Paras,
think
I can, yeah.
big expert. Is in California. I hope he comes. Paras is coming to 9th March. So if you are able to make it
Okay.
to San Francisco, you guys will meet. He's going to do the same stuff you're planning to do in LA. He's trying to do in Seattle. So and
I
Andy is
see.
here
I
who's
see. Oh,
trying to.
nice.
Obviously, he's
Okay.
coordinating
Okay.
everything.
Yeah.
He,
Yeah.
yeah, so good to see you
Yeah.
guys are there. So yeah, guys should catch up there
Yeah.
definitely. And
Yeah. Yeah.
Sanjeev is an expert in nutrition. He's done a couple of courses in the US, so he understands how to do this in US. So you should definitely, I think, catch
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Right, Sanjeev?
Yeah.
You
I
will be
can share
actually
some
able to log
resource.
in. Yeah.
Sanjay,
Yeah.
I'll WhatsApp you. I'll
Yeah.
post
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
number in the, yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely share some resources. Yeah. Yeah.
So good.
I,
Yes.
I recently also one thing I have noticed is, that's when you are in a different culture, different location. Like we, as India, we grew up about vegetarian diet and all, and here we see a lot of Americans very fit, eating meat every day, drinking every day, right? So that's what I'm still thinking through this is that a lot of Americans, like in their diet, they will eat chicken and they will drink wine, right? So I feel like it's balancing it. You get excess fat, you pour in excess acid, so it kind of breaks it. So what your body has to do, you have given a complementary food to work on it, and it's not as harmful when you think, okay, chicken is fine, I'm not gonna drink, or I'm gonna drink but not eat chicken, right? So you've created the imbalance because of your own this thing. So that's also a like pizza with beer is it kind of breaks that excess fat, but you skipped the beer and drank water with it, it's gonna become harmful, right? So those are the things play a very role which hard to understand it. It's yeah.
And it's just quickly sharing, like, I grew up in a very small town, and my mother is, to a point that like she gets all her even grains and she mixes, oh, aata peesna sab ghar pe hi hota hai. We have a lot of farmland around and all, so like, my dad's a doctor, log aake अरे ये सब्जी का बैग, वो सब्जी का बैग, ये जो भी है. So, like, even without trying, I think, like, for the up to my until I went to college, like, everything was super healthy anyway. घर की गाय से ही आ रहा है दूध, अगर दूध भी है, वो घी घी भी बन रहा है, वो घर पे बन रहा है, दही भी बन रहा है, घर पे बन रहा है. There was nothing from outside. There was no processing other than what my mom used to do. And so, like, that I have never been able to replicate part of his like personal choice, lifestyle. अभी सुबह 8 बजे से लेके शाम के 6 बजे तक तो काम करते रहते हैं. So then
Yeah.
it's like quick, whatever you can eat. And I went the other way as well. Like I started eating steaks like every day. Like घर पे खुद ही मैं cook करके अपना grill पे बना के, and I loved it. But after a point, like it's just not sustainable to like maybe my DNA. Some of my friends who go hunt and they go fish and they'll eat it every day, and they're like, हाँ हम लोग खुद से we have just you know
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
bring it, so like we have totally fine. Like what are you talking about? This is good or bad?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, the other thing is what is your lifestyle? How much calories you are burning every day? How much physical activity? So that is.
Well, thank you all for all the
Take this away, it's more than calories. Our microbiome is way more. I'm saying
Yeah. Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
calories. You may have the calories, you may burn more than it, but your long-term
Yeah.
health, your
Is
sustained well-being
microbiome.
is in your microbiome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
what will, and it will allow you to adapt to various environments. It plays a much bigger role. Calories is just
Yeah.
a very, I think,
Yeah.
reduction
Yeah. Yeah. None.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
looking at
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. I think
because
I mistakenly overemphasized on calories. Microbiome is the is
calories is
the godfather. Yeah.
we have
calories are
stories
problem
of
humans,
we have in India. There's a documented case of a guy who didn't eat for some 12 days, 14 days, 18 days under camera, day and night, and was doing
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Fully functional. There is no
Yeah.
need for calorie. He
Yeah.
has a different source somehow of energy.
Yeah.
Right. So everything is very different things are possible. I think it's for us to inquire
But I
into.
do understand Sanjeev is saying, because like America, everything are just insane number of calories, right? That high fructose corn syrup is used instead of like any kind of sugar. Like kuch bhi aap le lo, it's just so full of calories. So you end up eating like twice as much as you need. So that is, I would say, the biggest problem in the US. Like everybody is like getting more fat, but totally understand. Thank you, Sandeep, for organizing. I find these sessions to be really, helpful, and to build my mental model of how to start my journey. So I really appreciate. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Sandeep. Really good session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Bye.
It's gonna make you
Thank you.
Thank you.